action-packed.
Countrywide.
Sports for all.
Judge will have to confirm between these two. College Rose and the Kitchen Mechanic, Arctic Millie back in third, and Gunner Mix from Well back in fourth.
Coming back at him, both Dark Marlow and Black River, and suddenly Carlton Mackay has folded very tamely. He's going to try to come back, but it's Black River and Will Easterby who are in front as they go to the line, and it's Black River, Dark Marlow, Carlton Mackay.
Man for the Herd family on towards the final fence. NAVANMAN, he's over safely. Freelia then, and NAVANMAN's going to stay on through him. It's NAVANMAN going on to score. Freelia back in second. Carispa from the Wilds has come through the third.
Up and over, safely in the line, then Max finishing, and on the run in, Max finishing, and James the lead over 50. Waits goodbye to 50, and it's Max finishing Jack Hill.
The final fence, Highflyer on the inside, on the outside Salvatore, a good old scrap here with 150 yards left to go. Highflyer forced to dig deep, forced to find reserves from Salvatore, a green winter from the gods. They go towards the line, it's Highflyer out in front, Highflyer.
At the last together, Faraway Star on the far side, near side Captain Buck with Natalie Parker not even breathing on him yet. She's going to have to shake him up though, because Faraway Star will not go away. Faraway Star very game on the inside of Captain Buck. He got tight.
The 14th and final fence, Fumet Dudaris has got the front. Half a length is the lead over, getting closer. Is rallying strongly to every call. Back in third is occupied. Fumet Dudaris though is in front by a length, and he will not stop winning.
Scattercash to near side. Kate Lane though has joined her at the last for Phil York, and it's Scattercash to near side. Kate Lane the far side. They're clear of this is David, but Scattercash is finding plenty for Gina Andrews. Scattercash too good.
Chef to keep back with the definite advantage in the last. Jumped that one well too. From Swift Crusader in second place. On to the running. Chef to keep from Swift Crusader. They're wide apart. Chef to keep. Grand round of jumping. Chef to keep wins for Philip Hobbs and Dave Maxwell.
Okay, today I'm in Devon with Polly Gundry. Thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us today, Polly. So you and your husband Ed trained down here in Ottery St Mary. You under rules and Ed the Pointers. But before this career, you were the 8 times lady champion jockey, point-to-point jockey, which we'll talk about. But you moved to Ottery St Mary in 2006. Why Ottery?
Well, I'd looked for some ground to buy a little bit of land. For some reason I thought it was a good idea that I needed to have a little bit of land, because I'd got a small house in Taunton, and so I looked at some land in Gloucestershire near where my mum lives in the Berkeley country, and actually I was quite keen to get away from the Berkeley country. I love the area, but there wasn't, I knew the area well, and I knew there wasn't a huge amount of opportunity to buy anything there. And we could have gone nearer where Ed lives at Evesham, Broadway. But my father lived down in Devon at Dalwood, and still does, near Axminster. And so it seemed like a good idea to try and have a look down here. We looked actually at a place on Smeethorpe Airport, or Aerodrome, and that I think might have been a bit bleak up there. But we came down to Ottery because the farm buildings were here already, and the bridle path that runs through the farm buildings and then goes onto the lane up onto East Hill. So it was a really nice opportunity to buy somewhere where I could potentially pre-train young horses. I've always liked young horses, and that's what I thought I was always going to have a lot to do with, breaking, pre-training, and then hopefully a nice place to live. And Ottery is a lovely place to live. I have to say, when I first came down, Ottery is a very steady, old-fashioned small town, and the one-way system makes it very slow to get through. And so to start with, I did wonder whether I could cope with it being so slow, but now I love it.
Okay, now anyone in the sort of with a bit of a memory of point-to-points, as soon as you mention Ottery St Mary, the other name that rolls off the tongue is Oliver Carter.
Yes.
Any memories of Oliver?
Dear Oliver, yes, Oliver Carter was nearly a reason not to come down here. He's always frightened the life out of me. You know, he was an absolute legend of his day. Grant Cann, who I rode for quite a lot, he had ridden for Oliver a lot, and Polly Curling, and then Shirley Vickery, who were all people that very much went before me in the pointing. And so when we decided, or I decided that we're going to come down here, Oliver rang me and heard that I bought a little bit of ground down here, and said, very kindly offered his yard and stables and gallops, as he put it, to train our horses on. Well, I didn't have any horses, so it made no difference, and just said to him, I haven't got any horses, but I think we'll probably be all right where we are anyway at the moment. But no, Oliver, my experiences of Oliver, he kind of scared me because of the people that rode for him sometimes got telling off even for winning in a point-to-point. So for that reason, I thought I'd give him a wide berth.
Now, you were 8 times lady champion point-to-point rider.
That's right.
So before we get into that, can you tell us a bit about your background?
Well, my parents both rode in point-to-points, and my mum also evented, and my dad point-to-pointed, and obviously hunted a lot. And so I was very much brought up in the hunting field, did lots and lots of pony club. We had to leave pony club at 21 when I was young, but I think you can stay in pony club now until 25, and so I'd made the very most of pony club I could. And I also went eventing. I was lucky enough to spend 6 or 7 months with Mike and Angela Tucker at Tetbury, in the hope that I was going to improve my dressage a lot more. And Angela is the most brilliant dressage rider and a lovely lady and a brilliant teacher, but it was pretty much like water off a duck's back, her advice with me, because I didn't improve my dressage in an enormous amount. And so it was a combination of eventing being quite an expensive sport to do, horses going a bit lame in 1997, and the fact that I started to really enjoy the point-to-pointing, that I ended up going down the point-to-pointing route.
Okay, you used to ride with the hunts. Was that a good grounding for race riding?
It was a fabulous grounding. I rode all sorts of horses and ponies, whether they would be fat Shetlands to speedy little ponies, lots of Irish type horses, hunting, nagging on, thoroughbreds, for anyone and everyone. But learning to cross the country, learning how to get from A to B, following hounds, not necessarily always jumping a lot, opening and shutting gates, learning to handle a horse was very, very important.
Okay, then when you when did you sort of decide to ride in point to points? And do you remember the first time you competed?
Well, I was always mad keen, and then my example or someone to follow in our area was Alison Dare, and she was just amazing. Alison and Dick Bainbridge, who was the person that trained all the horses that she won on, they were a brilliant team. Their strike rate was at least 30% runners to winners, or winners to runners, and it was just, you know, we all wanted to be Alison. We realised that none of us were going to be Alison, but yeah, that was. We had someone to watch. We go to the Berkeley Point to Point every year, and even before I'd left school when I was 16, I went and worked at weekends to help Dick ride out, and went to some point to points and led Alison up, and just loved it, loved the whole thing. Didn't have a very rounded view of life when you went to help Alison and Dick, because they'd have 3 or 4 winners every day they went pointing. But Dick was just, I absolutely idolise him as a trainer. So yeah, that was a very strong influence.
Okay, there was some point in your career, fairly early on, that you started to become like Alison, and you know, when did you sort of realise that you were better than most of the other jockeys because you were doing extremely well compared to them?
Well, because of the hunting that I did a lot of, my mother allowed me to ride a lot of different, sometimes difficult horses, and she's always been of the nature, get on and understand a horse's psychology, whether it's frightened or nervous, or just get on and get it working. And then that experience I had riding every different sort of horse across the country meant that when I first went point to pointing, and I was very lucky to ride a horse called Schlemmer for Mike Good that was trained by Mr. Phelps, Ken Phelps, near Berkeley. But basically, the main thing is you've got to stay on over 18 fences. If you can stay on and keep the horse upright, well, then you're more likely to be in a position to win or finish placed than if you're falling off. So that very obviously, and that comes from hunting and following hounds. If you fall off out hunting in the field and your horse is gone, you are never going to keep up with hounds. So that was obviously very important. And then I suppose just the thrill of jumping has always been what has inspired me most. And I quite often rode other horses. I wasn't worried about riding other horses that had fallen, because I'd have a bit of an arrogance about me that I could get a horse across country out hunting, and therefore I could probably get it over 18 fences in a point to point. So if I could get a horse round that other people hadn't been able to get round, and even if it finished last or 5th or 6th, the owners were happy, and so that's how I built a reputation. But because of that reputation, I did get asked to ride quite a lot of horses that didn't jump well. But it got the horses round, and then John Daniel, who was really my mentor, he'd won all sorts of things. He was a steward, a jockey club steward. He was also a very good judge of a horse, and he gave me a huge leg up in pointing me in the right direction, giving me pointers on the day, as in, when I say pointers, advice on what I was doing right or wrong. I also hunted with him a lot, and so his advice when I was actually riding and his connections, so introducing me to Grant Can, he also, in a roundabout way, introduced me to Richard Barber through friends, meant that I first started getting horses round. Some farming families, the Tucks and the Greys, John Gray, from the Berkeley, were kind enough to put me up on horses. Had the odd small winner, when I say small winner, very important winners point to pointing, and then John Daniel's introduction to Richard Barber got me onto the best horses. So that's, it's very important that you start at the bottom. I had just a very, very fortunate career to do my basics in the hunting field, then in the point to point field, and then I was so lucky to ride for Richard Barber. And the reason I ended up riding for Richard Barber was Polly Curling had a fall on a young horse in a maiden race, I believe or maybe it was a restricted race at Didmarton in 1997, and she couldn't ride flake totes in the ladies' race. And the other 6 or 7 girls that were far more experienced than I was and better, they were all busy, obviously, in the ladies' race, all had rides already, and so I was the only available girl around on that day, and managed to not fall off, and Flake Totes was a very decent horse.
Okay, so you then went on to win, as we mentioned earlier, 8 ladies championships. How difficult was it to be involved in a title race and really be determined to win it, you know, to get all the rides? And
the only difficulty was I like to be a sportsman, and I know that one or two people think I'm really hard, but actually I'm quite a softie, and there's no point falling out with people when you're riding against them, or I wanted to be, I didn't want to be the most unpopular person in the weighing room, and I wanted to win. And the main reason actually for riding in races is because I enjoyed riding horses over fences at speed, and I was, because of the hunting and everything else we talked about, and then I got on to the better horses, I wasn't bad at it. But the other reason that I was successful is because I really enjoyed car booting, and I always tell young people that, because that's how I got onto the good horses, because I talk so much at the back of a car boot and tell owners how their horses went or why they went like that, or the psychological side of a horse's race. And I enjoy a glass of whiskey or a glass of port, and so that was as big a part of it really to my success as the actual riding, because people will put you up because they get to know you and they like you, hopefully. Well, assume that's the reason they put me up. So yeah, that's it's the whole package, and that's, I think when you say, did I ever realise, or when did I realise I was better? I wasn't better than a whole lot of other people. Being a good jockey is more about not doing things wrong more than doing a whole lot of things right. And the psychological side of a horse's race, I was probably as good as a lot of people. And then getting myself on the right horses was all to do about car booting, which was completely second nature, first nature to me, because I enjoyed it so much.
Okay, and when you were riding, there were also quite a few other good lady riders. Yeah. These days, under rules, they've got, there's some big names and they're doing really well.
Yeah.
But back then, it wasn't the case. I mean, why do you think lady riders thrived in point-to-points and not under rules?
Well, in those days, it was never really considered, certainly in Alison Dare's day and Polly Curling's, they were never going to consider going professional. Alison Dare was enjoying being at the very top. Dick Bainbridge was not at all interested in running horses under rules. He'd run the odd one or two, I think, in a hunter chase if he was bullied, but it wasn't particularly his idea, it was his owner's ideas. So they were my example. Polly Curling was very good in that she rode for Richard Barber, and she had a lot of winners, but she was very strong. Everyone knows how strong Polly Curling was as a rider. And it just wasn't really the done thing. The other thing about the point-to-pointing girls, apart from Shirley Vickery and Alison Dare, most of us were pretty scruffy. And I'm a great believer now that the reason the girls are getting on so well is quite often the professional girls of today, you can hardly tell they're a girl. They're so tidy, they're neater. And it's the influence of riding against good professionals that have got them to tidy themselves up. I think I look back and I'm nicely flattered that I didn't look too scruffy on some occasions, but more often than not, I very much look like an amateur lady rider as opposed to a professional jockey. And that's why I've never considered myself. I could pick myself out so easily from a bunch of jockeys in a race. I'd never consider I was going to fit in as a professional. But nowadays, these professionals, but the professional girls are so neat and tidy and good, and they're getting so many more opportunities, probably because they don't stick out as not being tidy, and they're very effective. And what they haven't got in quite as much strength as a boy at the same weight, they've got in skill and talent and brains.
Okay, now one of the things point-to-points are notorious for, sometimes you have to ride in extremely atrocious conditions, and then you've only got a tent to get changed in and warmed up. So how were those sort of days? And do you remember a particularly bad day?
Those days are the reason that I want to get back doing it. I mean, I would just love, age 45, to take out my licence to ride on the wettest days. When you fall, it's just not going to hurt, are you? All you're going to do is skid. So, those are the days I loved. And the way to keep warm on a point-to-point course is to ride. I mean, you get pretty warm if you lead up, but definitely riding, it's the only way. You see lots of people stood there with loads of coats on, freezing, and you ride in a race, and after the race you're warm for the next half hour. Perfect. So no, last season I really missed the pointing because it was so wet, and you're sludging around in the mud at Buckfastleigh or Wadebridge and slipping all over the place. Well, the best place would have been to be on a horse, popping around. Popping around. Everything slows down and it's much nicer for the horses. It's not great if the rain's going sideways, but actually the horses don't mind. And because they slow all the racing up, it's much more about how you ride the horses. It's not just about who's the fastest.
Okay, you mentioned a couple of courses there. Were there any in particular that you used to enjoy riding around?
Well, the slower tracks like Wadebridge and Buckfastleigh and Fleet, I loved courses where you could nick lengths, and it wasn't all about speed. They were some very favourite courses. I did love Larkhill because I had a lot of lovely rides around Larkhill. But you more often than not, the best horse wins at Larkhill. I was pretty fond of Chipley Park. There's a Dower Stayers track. They've improved the fences every year. I'd get back and ride at Chipley if I could because they've improved the fences. They've improved the fences actually in point to points throughout Devon because they've got far less of the sloping frame fences they used to have, and they've now gone for the upright backs, and horses jump those a bit better and they're a bit less trappy to ride over. So I think Berkeley Woodford point to point course, I loved the fences there, but I was always so hopeful of doing well in front of my friends, and I usually crashed and burned.
Any courses that you didn't particularly enjoy?
I think probably Berkeley Woodford for that reason. I think I ended up in hospital twice after Berkeley, which I was very lucky. I didn't visit hospital too many times from my point to pointing. But yeah, I went further afield. We went to Godstone once. That was a very, very undulating track. I think I would have really liked that track if I'd ridden around it a lot. Small fences, very undulating. But no, those are. I did used to love Lamala, which is the North. I think it was the North Cornwall point to point, or East Cornwall point to point, and you jump the first fence 4 times. I mean, basically going round in circles. But that had a lovely atmosphere.
Okay. Any particularly memorable races or incident-packed races that stick in your mind?
Oh, no, I was thinking of this earlier. There was an instance of Bratton Down. I was riding Let's Fly, and I think there were 6 of us in the race. It was a ladies' race at the end of the year, and I thought he probably ought to finish 4th, but I thought I mustn't go in defeated. It was later on in my career, and I think both of Philip Hobbs's daughters, Catherine and Diana, had a horse in it each, St Romble and something else. Lucy Gardner had her Grace's O, who was a good horse at the time, and Rimpton Boy with Rachel Green on. And I was thinking, well, if I can finish 4th, what is the point in me? I ought to go in there with a much better attitude than that. And anyway, we jumped out. We had a typical race where I go slow to start with, and then I quicken it up more, and I seem to do the opposite to everyone else. And Let's Fly won by half a length, and it was just a really great achievement. And it was because I had such a willing partner in Let's Fly, and that's what I try and instill in owners and jockeys, that if we can get their horses to just want to win, and the jockey be the willing partner to listen to the horse, and all that you've got to do is know where the finishing post is. If you get those horses to really, really want to win, Let's Fly was just the most amazing horse in that he wanted to win more than any of us, and that's why I was really a necessary evil for poor old Let's Fly to have to carry around with him, because he needed someone to tell him where the finishing line was, and that's what I was there for.
Okay, so at what point did you suddenly decide to set your sights on Alison Dare's 287 total? I slightly avoided the whole thing in my own mind, in that people said, do you think you'll catch Alison Dare? And I thought, well, she's my icon, so why would I want to catch someone that I thought so much of
it wasn't a case of me. I rode in point to points because I enjoyed it. I didn't go out to set records or anything else. And records are there to be broken, but it's always a little bit disappointing for some people when they get broken. And Alison Dare was pretty disappointed that I was likely to get near her record, and I thought that was rather sad. And when I say I thought it was sad, I thought it was sad if I was going to go and break her record, and it was making her sad. I'm probably a bit too soft. But anyway, it was a case that it was just one of those things that lots of people made a bit of a thing of. John Beasley made a bit of a thing of it, but and it came and it went. And I didn't make a... It's a great achievement because it meant that I became winning most point-to-point rider. GINA ELLIS could easily break it. She's a very good pilot, and she's got a great team behind her. It is, again, it's all about the team you've got. But I think, yes, in raising the bar, hopefully since I rode and went past that number of Alison's, you've got to remember when Alison Dare was riding, they only mostly raced on Saturdays throughout her whole of her career. It was only later on in her career they raced on Sundays as well. But it very much, bars are raised slightly, and the girls that are riding today are in a different league to what we were doing.
Kind of, you'd have thought that somebody that's ridden 287 winners, it'd be second nature. Was there ever any sort of, were you ever frightened, or was there ever any fear?
Later on, I was permanently frightened of being the weakest link of the day, and that was my main fear. I didn't love riding on quick ground because I couldn't make adjustments to the horse to help it when the ground was quick. You have to rely on the horse to get it right every single time, and I'm probably a control freak, so I like to think I was doing something useful. But yeah, I think... Sorry, I can't remember that. What was the last bit of that question?
Were you ever frightened, or when you went out to ride? Did
yeah,
you have any stage fright?
I seriously got stage fright in the end, and I probably would have given up in 2009. But Ian Channing was going to ride for us in 2009 to a greater extent. He rode for us a bit in 2008, and in a small schooling accident just over poles, he broke his femur in October 2008. And when I was holding his leg straight, because his femur was bent, I said, I will continue riding long enough that you get back to ride our horses to help you get back on track. And we did that. So I did that and a bit more. But again, I was trying to look for the jockeys and get people used to our way of doing things so that they could take over from me. But it was Ian Channing's breaking his leg that made me ride longer than I would have done.
Okay, and another landmark, I would imagine, in your career was winning the Fox Hunters at Aintree over the national fences on Tooled Off Express. So that must have been a bit scary.
No, I remember what was scary, again, is me being the weakest link. When I went to Aintree, having finished third in the Cheltenham Fox Hunters, and then a couple of weeks later you go to Aintree, and the Cheltenham Fox Hunters, I thought I got the ride absolutely right on him. We jumped the last, virtually upsides, with a wet sail coming, and him and Last Option's legs were slightly longer than Tooled Off Express. The rhythm was exactly the same the whole way up, but Last Option had a slightly longer stride and did me by a couple of lengths. And so I thought, well, this is a completely pointless exercise going to Aintree, because after walking the Aintree course, the fences weren't that big. I know it sounds stupid, but in 2002, the fences were considerably smaller than they were in 2008, for example, when I went back there and rode again. And when I walked the course at Aintree, I thought, well, the fences aren't anywhere near big enough. If he likes Aintree and likes jumping big fences, we haven't got enough to jump. And so I'd resigned myself to it being a slightly too short a trip for him. I got a good start, and I had the most easy ride, enjoyable ride you could ever imagine. It felt like I cheated because I was on a horse that loved Aintree. And Tooled Off Express wouldn't always travel that easily. He had plenty of speed and quality about him. But the park horses, like especially Haydock, he was quite hard work around there. And Cheltenham was all right, but as soon as Tooled Off Express saw the first fence, he went, were in the right place. And he just grew and he travelled and jumped, and it was the easiest ride I've ever had. So it was a bit of a damp squib on, was it frightening? No, because Tour Def was just a jumping machine. And it really drills at home that the horse does the jumping. Us jockeys sit quiet and present the horse well at a fence so that the horse can get on and do his job.
And would you have had a crack at the National itself if you had the chance?
Yeah, very definitely. We had John Burbage owned Mrs B, and Mrs B was entered for the National and missed it by 2. She wasn't even on the reserve list. That's when they first brought out reserves, I think. And so, no, we were going to have a go at that. Mrs B finished 3rd in the cross-country race at Cheltenham over 3 miles 7 early on in that cross-country races era. So, yeah, I think Mrs B would have just jumped round, probably not had quite enough quality to really figure in the first 4 or 5, but I think she would have given me a hell of a ride.
I think you rode 303 winners in
That's
total.
right.
What was it kept you driven to achieve what you were doing during your riding career?
I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed going, I enjoyed young horses. I didn't always love the horses who were odds-on favourites. I enjoyed young horses that were struggling to get round or struggling to be understood. I always enjoyed maiden races. They go a bit slower. And again, as a rider, I could have a more positive contribution to how a horse is running and getting its confidence. And I also enjoyed the parties, and I was always a bit disappointed that they quite often in the old days the maiden races were the last race of the day, and because I enjoyed riding the maidens, by the time I got changed after riding in the last race, everyone else had buggered off home. But there was usually a few hardcore car boots left for me to go and have a sociable chat with someone.
Okay, and what you enjoyed it so much? What was the ultimate reason for retiring?
I was getting, because I was always worried about being the weakest link, and I wasn't as fit. I was training horses more at home than I had been, and I wasn't as fit or as strong. Probably getting a bit idle. Probably doing too much at home, doing too much training, made me more tired for the weekends. Employing staff definitely makes you a little bit more tired because you've got to think on your feet a lot more, and it was just the way life was changing. Ed said that I was aware that I was getting grumpy from about Friday morning onwards because I was preparing myself to ride in a race, and Ed, after I finished, said, well, you had to be grumpy because you rode much better when you were grumpy. So he encouraged me to be bad-tempered because he felt I rode better like that, and that was getting hard work. If you do that from the beginning of January to the end of May, being grumpy from Friday morning until Sunday afternoon, it's not a whole lot of fun for even me, let alone everyone else who was around me.
And life's totally changed now because you're a mother of 2 children. Would you encourage them to be point-to-point riders?
Not particularly. If they want to go down that route and then do it, absolutely fine. But anyone that wants to ride in point-to-points must be very aware of the risks involved, the hardship of falling. I never really minded falling, so that's fine. But if anyone, you've got to be second nature to fall. I could really enjoy the falls that I had. Some of them I had, which sounds a bit wrong, but it's the same as lads falling off skateboards or anything else. You want to be physically very fit to fall. It's not about being fit to ride, it's being fit to fall. And if my children were fit to fall and really enjoyed jumping fences at speed, I will support them every inch of the way. But if they're half-hearted and they're doing it because they think they ought to, I won't encourage them at all.
So now you're a trainer under rules, mm-hmm. and you and your husband Ed are a business partnership as well as husband and wife. How easy is that?
Well, the business partnership, in some ways, it is quite separate because I do leave the point-to-pointing decisions as to where to run horses to him to a great extent, unless it's something to do with one of particularly my owners bringing on a young horse for the good of the young horse as to where we run. So Ed is very much in charge of the point-to-point side, and I'm very much in charge of the breaking, pre-training and national hunt side. And because I only have 9 stables for national hunt, in some ways my side of the business is a bit smaller, but then I get involved in the breaking.
Kind of Ed rode 40 winners as a point-to-point rider, and he was the West Midlands champion. Did you ever ride against each other?
Yes, I did. I have to say, I didn't really know Ed. He was quite shy, and I rode down in the West Country a lot more, probably when he was riding most in point-to-points. Also, Ed was pretty quiet because he had to watch his weight very closely, and so he couldn't go off socialising. And I mean, I think he went off drinking plenty, but I don't think after racing. But he wouldn't have gone to the dinner parties that I went to. So yeah, I knew of him, and actually we partly got together because I did notice him. And so when I couldn't ride a horse for Philip Greenwood at Maysmore, I managed to find Edward Walker's telephone number so that I could then put the ride in his way, in the hope that if it went well, we might meet up afterwards, which worked a treat.
Love it when a plan comes together. So you started as a point-to-point trainer with just 4 horses.
Yeah.
That must have been quite tough in the early days.
Do you know, we bumbled along and we hadn't really got an idea what we were doing. We're doing just purely what our hearts told us to. We had Sally and John Orford as owners of 2 horses, and Roger Maggs, who was a great reason that I bought the ground down here and I was encouraged to train pointers in the first place. Roger Maggs had 2 horses with us, and we were just doing it because we enjoyed it, which is a great reason to start. And we were very ambitious to try and do something well for those owners and for ourselves, but we didn't have any great ambition, and that's why it worked beautifully, and we were very lucky, and it was all a bit hand to mouth, and we didn't have all the equipment and all the kit that we've got now, but we really enjoyed it, and we really were so lucky in the horses we managed to choose or fall upon, because the first year I think we had perhaps 1 or 2 winners. The second year we had 15 winners out of 15 horses, and the next year we had 33 winners out of 18 horses. It was quite ridiculous how in 3 years how it took off. So and that was when I was working for Spillers, so out and about in the country, and Ed was here training the pointers with some help from Stuart Sampson, who trains now, and Rose Vickery used to come in and ride out, and a lovely girl called Nikki Brooks worked for us. And so basically I think we probably did much better when I wasn't at home.
So you're so steeped in the point-to-point scene. Why did you make the decision to train under rules?
We had a horse for Guy Henderson. Guy is MD at Ascot Racecourse, and his son Robbie Henderson actually had a horse of Richard Mitchell called Fortview, and Guy Henderson was trying to encourage Robbie to go to university at Exeter and take his place, and so he asked us if we would have Fortview down here and train him so that Robbie could come back from Exeter Uni every morning and ride out. Actually, poor Guy Henderson, it really backfired because Robbie didn't go to university, it didn't interest him at all, and we ended up training Fortview and had a wonderful time. Guy was a hugely great influence. He was so encouraging to me and so appreciative of us trying our best with Fortview, which we try our best with all the horses. And so it was Guy's suggestion that he would like Fortview and Robbie to ride under rules. And so he encouraged me to take out a licence. So that's what I did.
Are there any particularly different challenges training under rules than point-to-pointers?
More so in recent years. The horses in races go faster and faster, and it's more difficult to give horses that nice introduction. You have to get them stinging fit, and they have to be able to jump out the start gate and go like hell. And if you don't train them to do that, they won't see which way they went, which does happen with our horses. I think the reason it happens with our horses is we get optimistic about the horses we've got, and we think that if you ride the nice race on them where you jump out and go sensibly, not too quick early on, they see their races out well, but they're probably not good enough horses, some of them. So it is a challenge that you've got to gallop them a bit more because they have got to be going much nearer their maximum speed from the flagfall.
Okay, now just for the layman, and that includes me, Ed trains the pointers, you train the horses and the rules. Are both establishments totally separate, or do you will the horses work together? And
the horses very much do work together. For a start, I'll be riding my horses. Ed being a bit bigger than me, he will sometimes ride Dawson City because he's thicker set and he needs a lot of work and he needs a bit of weight on him. And then So sometimes Ed is officially my assistant trainer, so there can be a crossover, but we basically I have my staff doing my horses and Ed has his staff doing his.
Okay, so we talked before, and I know you don't have to qualify in hunts anymore, but do the pointers still go hunting?
Yes, the pointers, any of the horses can go hunting. Dawson City is my best national hunt horse, and he goes hunting a bit. It just cheers him up and keeps him happy. He travels better in a race if he's been hunting within a week or 10 days before he runs. The point-to-point horses go hunting for help their education. They go in a lorry, go and stand on the lorry for a bit before the meet. They might be out there for 3 or 4 hours. I never hunt a racehorse for too long, because I think you can, you're trying to get them really fit. You don't want to take off any meat. You know, if you're out on them for a long time, they can lose weight, and you don't want them too lean. Not that our horses would ever be accused of being too lean. But yeah, all of our horses can potentially go hunting, and we hunt them for education or to cheer them up. And it doesn't matter whether they're national hunt or point to point. I generally am the one that hunts all the horses, because when you go through flinty ground or gateways, it's better that I'm in charge, and I know the hunting fraternity and the hunting country is better. So if I take a member of my staff hunting with me on a horse, I will be with them generally, because again, I know the countries, and so I can just keep an eye.
Okay, so another part of the business is breaking horses, which basically taking a wild animal and taming it. Is that what it is?
It is. It depends how. If the horses have been well handled as foals and yearlings and 2-year-olds, they're not very difficult to do at all. Some people, one of my very best owners has been Ross Oliver, and he would be greatly developed his opinion that horses should be competitive, naturally competitive. Well, that's all very well, but whilst being naturally competitive, they also have got to do what they're asked to do by their rider. And if they argue against you when you're riding them, the race is gone. So yeah, in some ways it is taking a wild animal. It depends where these horses are brought and bred from as to how wild they are. Most horses, the equine species has definitely been tamed. It's a bit like dogs. You know, you very much get wolves, which are wild dogs, and then you get the dogs. I can't think of the word at the moment, but most dogs are fairly easy to train.
Okay, now I was interested, once again, this is me not really understanding how it all works. On your website it says the horses can be broken from the 1st of May to the end of October, so why that time scale? That's
just because we're much less busy from that time. To be fair, the breaking, I sometimes start breaking them from the 1st of March if someone wants something broken in earlier. We've got longer hours, I've got more time in the day, because the days are so much longer throughout the summer, and I can take my time. Whereas when we're in the winter months, we've got pointers in for Ed, I've got national hunt horses in, and the whole cogs of the wheel need to move very smoothly to get 4 lots ridden out efficiently in the mornings. When you're breaking in horses, sometimes you need to take a lot of time with the young horse to get its confidence, to basically practice join up, which is getting the horse used to you and being your partner when you're breaking them in. And so it's that reason that we need to smoothly run well-oiled machine working in the winter, because it's shorter daylight hours, and in the summer we've got time.
Okay, what facilities do you have here?
We've got our main working facility for exercising the horse is a 4.5 furlong gallop. It's a sand gallop which starts in a hill, goes up quite a good hill, and then into a flat oval on the top, and so we can do lots of steady cantering. We would long rein young horses up there. We'll ride young horses when they're just broken up there, walking and trotting, and we can do all our steady work on with the race horses to get their stamina and fitness. Then I've got a school up the road that I can use if I want to go and do grid work and the weather is terrible. But we in the middle of our gallop, we've got a nice flat grass area where we've got a dressage arena and just grass and various show jumps that we can play around with. a lot of our horses do a lot of walking and trotting over poles to make them aware of where their feet are. We've got the most amazing hacking areas around here. We've got lots and lots of woods up on East Hill, and bridle paths that lead us up there. And I'm very keen on getting horses out and in the woods, because I think it's a very nice way of getting them fit, trotting and cantering. Without them thinking they're getting fit, they're going from A to B. We've also got lots of turn-out paddocks. I'm really keen on turning horses out. We can turn out 10 horses every afternoon. And so some horses don't get turned out because they fizz or gallop around and don't settle, but most horses go out 2, 3 or 4 times a week. And then I go up the hill, and we've got a grass gallop that's 4 to 5 furlongs long, depending on how you use it, but certainly a 4 furlong straight, and so they can get galloped on grass as well. So yeah, we've got 2 horse walkers and various lorries, but I'm very keen on taking horses out and about in lorries to get them used to, you know, I don't want the first time they've ever been in a lorry, having left our place, to be going to the races. They will have probably gone for a morning's trail hunting, they will have done a hunter trial, or they will have done a dressage test at a riding club event. They will have done lots of little trips. So they get in the lorry and they're completely au fait with being in the lorry, relaxing, confident in their surroundings, so that when you take them somewhere new, they don't forget to breathe. If you don't breathe, they don't run well in races. The most important thing, as well as being fit, is that they breathe when they get there. And so I'm a great believer in making sure that you have a horse really well prepared. And if anyone sends horses to us for pre-training, which we're very lucky we have, Richard Kelvin Hughes does exactly that, and a few other people, that the horses have a really good all-round education. Flat work, some people call it dressage, it's basically just flat work and educating a horse to carry itself well, so that they use all the muscles in their body available to them, basically. If you just walk and trot horses and canter them in straight lines, there's a whole bunch of muscles that they won't have trained. And so I'm very keen on making sure the horse learns to use itself well, establishes a self-carriage when it's working, whether it be in walk, trot or canter, and gets secure in doing lots of different things, so that when you take it to a race course, it then goes, oh, we're doing something new. This is great. We've done lots of new things in the past, and I think I'm going to enjoy it, as opposed to a horse that holds its breath, gets worried and concerned about things, and then you can't run even over 5 furlongs on one breath, let alone 3 miles.
Okay, and you're also keen on, well, racing club. You've got a racing club and all sorts of syndicates. You encourage that? Yes,
we've got point-to-point syndicates, and we've had we've really got 1 or possibly 2 horses to go into a syndicate this time. We have, but we always have syndicates available, and I think it's a great way of people getting involved in racing without it costing the earth. And it's very important within these syndicates you put the like-minded people together. I've learnt from slight mistakes in the past that if you want like-minded people together so they can go and enjoy each other's company. If it's not working, that horse might go to a sale and it might get bought back by the same syndicate, missing 1 or 2 members because it didn't suit those members. And I don't think you should be ever frightened of the truth. If a syndicate member isn't enjoying it, 1 syndicate member out of 4 or 5 people can't have the biggest say. So it's got to be an enjoyable situation. Horse is a pleasure. It doesn't matter whether you're riding horses yourself or you're involved in a syndicate. They should stay a pleasure, and everyone's opinions counts. But basically, as a trainer, I'm the chairman of the committee.
Okay, and finally, ambitions that you've got your sights on as a trainer, or anything else in that manner?
Yeah, I would. I think as a trainer, I just like every horse to reach its full potential. And that's what sending a horse to me will hopefully mean, that horse reaches its full potential, because I understand its psychological needs and I make it really well prepared for the job it's going to do, in the hope that the jockey can get on at a race course and just ride a race, because the horse knows its job, whether it be galloping and jumping, and the jockey can have confidence in that horse so that then it can go and avoid the other opponents in the race, ride the sort of race to suit the horse, and even if it doesn't win, run the best race it can. If a horse keeps is sound and it jumps well and it's confident, it's going to, and it hasn't got a breathing issue, it's going to win something. And so if that horse can run its best race every time it goes on a race course, it'll win something. If they're fractious and they're nervous and you have to sometimes work at these, they don't just come onto a race course and get it all right straight away. And it does slightly bring me on to that's the problem with national hunt racing. They go so fast so early in so many of the national hunt races now. It's very difficult to educate a nice young horse. And so undulating tracks, the likes of Chepstow or Exeter, are much easier places to educate a nice young horse than a flatter track like Newton Abbot or Newbury, where you've got a lot of good horses running there. And that's also the benefit of using pointer points, because you go so much slower in a pointer point. You can have a nice education for a nice young horse. You might get away with a nice young horse running very fast early on in a race, but you're more likely to that won't be quite as good an experience if the young horse has a quieter, slower start to racing. So I'm very keen on introducing young horses gradually in the right place, on the right race course, in the right situation, so that they can reach their potential over when you train a young horse, its best race shouldn't be in its first 3. It should become better at racing the older it gets. And until probably the age of 7 or 8, your national hunt horses should keep improving. If you have its best race when it's 4 or 5, you probably know it wasn't the most positive experience, and that's why it goes downhill.
Okay, final question. Riding or training?
Riding.
Polly Gundry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Action packed.
Countrywide.
Everyone!
Sports for all.
Judge will have to confirm between these two. College Rose and the kitchen mechanic, Arctic Millie back in 3rd, and Gunner Mix from Well back in 4th.
Coming back at him, both Dark Marler and Black River, and suddenly Carlton Mackay has folded very tamely. He's going to try to come back, but it's Black River and Will Easterby who are in front as they go to the line, and it's Black River, Dark Marler, Carlton Mackay.
The Herd family on towards the final fence. NAVANMAN, he's over safely. Freelia then, and NAVANMAN's going to stay on through him. It's NAVANMAN going on to score. Freelia back in 2nd. Carispa from the Wilds has come through the 3rd.
Up and over, in the light, then back position, and on the run in, back position, and gains the lead over Aintree. Waits to try the Aintree, and it's back position and Jockey.
Foran into it by GINA, and Gamer really
the final fence. Untitled on the inside, on the outside Salvatore. A good old scrap here with 150 yards left to go. Untitled forced to dig deep, forced to find reserves. From Salvatore, a green winter from the gods. They go towards the line, it's Untitled out in front, Untitled. At the last together, Faraway Star on the far side. Near side, Captain Butts. With Natalie Parker not even breathing on him yet. She's going to have to shake him up though, because Faraway Star will not go away. Faraway Star very game on the inside of Captain Butts. It got tight. The 14th and final fence. Fumet Judaris has split the front. Half a length is the lead over, getting closer. Who is running strongly to every call. Back in third is occupied. Fumet Judaris though is in front by a length, and he will not stop winning.
Scattercash the near side. CHELEDA has joined her at the last for Phil York, and it's Scattercash the near side. CHELEDA the far side. They're clear of this is David, but Scattercash is finding plenty for GINA Andrews. Scattercash too good.
Chef to keep back with the definite advantage in the last. Jumped that one well too. From Swift Crusader in second place. On to the running. Chef to keep from Swift Crusader. They're wide apart. Chef to keep. Grand round of jumping. Chef to keep wins for Philip Hobbs and Dave Maxwell.